and welcome back in for another RedRecover.com Inside the Paint Show. Our last before we head off to the preseason. We get actual stuff happening after sort of an uneven preseason here or off-season here for the Heat and the rest of the NBA. I'm Ira Winderman from the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, where it's 9 a.m. and it's all good. He's Kurt Helin out in Los Angeles, 6 a.m. from Pro Basketball Talk and NBCSports.com. Kurt, I want to start and hit the ground right away with something because a little more of this came out this week with the Suns indicating that Jay Crowder is very much available. Brian Windhorst on ESPN went on their afternoon show, said the same. Jay has been sending out interesting tweets and social media clips about perhaps it's time to move on. We know that the Suns are moving in a more youthful direction. They're also looking to do some extensions. So I wanted to open this week's show with this thought. How important is it in camp and the EVA camp to live in the moment versus to protect the future? And the reason I'm asking that is because over here on the East Coast, we have the Jay Crowder thing versus giving up future assets. And over there on the West Coast for you and the Lakers, they can make moves right now that could very much make them better in the moment, but then they give up their future first-round pick assets for something bigger. So my question to you, Kurt, would be this to open our show today. If you're a team, do you think it's more important to live in the moment and understand now is guaranteed? You don't know what's going to happen in the future with these picks. Or do you think this is a time for teams like the Heat, top of the standings, Lakers, maybe middle, bottom of the standings, to go ahead and make a move? What's sort of your take on going into camp? Pull the trigger, get your roster settled, hit the ground running, or sort of pull back and wait to see the bigger picture, the bigger landscape?
Personally, I think it kind of depends on where you are. And if you're the Lakers, because you used that example, or some other team middle of the pack or lower, look, and you keep hearing this out of the Lakers camp, which is, look, man, we're not giving up both picks for a move. They can trade two picks for people who don't know, 27 and 29. We're not giving up both picks and anything else for a move that doesn't move us to contender status, which is why they were in the Kyrie Irving talks, because we could debate whether it would, but it at least gets them close, right? They're not doing it just to dump Russell Westbrook, and I kind of think that's smart. I think where the Heat are different is they are contenders, right? Like, I mean, this was a team with the best record in the East last year that, if Jimmy Butler hits a three, we're having maybe a different conversation. When you're that close, don't you have to kind of push the chips in? Don't you? I mean, there aren't as many opportunities, and I think you're or should be more willing to give up future assets to win now, because at the end of the day, flags fly forever. I mean, that is the goal, man. It's not to be kind of good every year unless you're in Indianapolis. Like, the goal is to win this thing, man.
And I get that. And the point I've been trying to make is, because there's always a name of the week. And we were dealing early in the year with Kevin Durant, and then we were dealing with Donovan Mitchell. And there's been different names along the way. And for whatever reason, Jay Crowder's name is out there right now. It's sort of interesting the way that the Suns are approaching things. Kind of interesting also that they're considering an extension for Cam Johnson, who I like it as a nice player, and I get all that. But I don't necessarily see him as a power forward either, although in today's NBA, I don't know what a power forward is. So, and I think this is a good place to sort of stop and reset here for this reason. Because Jay Crowder has been to so many teams and so many places, we've seen him in different landing spots. Your thoughts, Kurt Helin, when you rate your NBA players and you look at different landing spots and different players, is Jay Crowder at his age now in the 30s and what he's done, and look at it. He's been in the NBA Finals 2 years ago. He's been on a very competitive team. He was the starting power forward on the team with the best NBA record last season. So there's a lot there in the resume even recently to say that. But looking at the Eastern Conference, me telling you the only way I make a play for Jay Crowder, well, I guess it's two things. The only way I make a play for Jay Crowder is if I know he's going to be my starting power forward. And the only reason Jay Crowder would want to come to Miami is to be the starting power forward. If he's going to have to be a backup somewhere, that's his journeyman life. He doesn't want to do that again, apparently, based on his social media. Kurt, I want you to sort of go through your analysis a little bit here quickly. Don't need to get into too many metrics because probably don't have another computer screen open anyway. But
I don't either.
How good is Jay Crowder? And my question to you is this. Would Jay Crowder even be close to the middle of the pack of Eastern Conference starting power forwards?
Maybe. Boy, the problem is that again, it depends on how you're defining positions. There's some really good power forwards in the East, though. Is the problem, especially with the other teams at the top, with Boston, with Milwaukee, with other good team, Brooklyn, whatever they're going to do. Like, there's really good and where you label guys, but maybe a little below that. But I think the other question you have to ask yourself there, Ira, is he, how big an upgrade is he over what you've got if you don't have him, which is, I think, where Miami comes in, jumping up and down. And by the way, you're right. I'm not Cam Johnson's biggest fan, but Cam Johnson has what they think they really need, which is shooting. I think they're going to try to get the ball more to Ayton this year. If you're going to do that, then you better space the floor. And Cam is just a better shooter. He's a good shooter. But Jay Crowder, I think, for the Heat, you have to look at it and think, man, that is a serious upgrade. It's just, then it becomes a question of price, right? And
I want to get into that in a second, but I want to go back to the analysis. Also, if you're watching us live on Inside the Paint, RedRecover.com show today, feel free to join us on the YouTube chat board. Great or good, I appreciate the compliment here. Say something nice about Kurt. I'll read that also. If you're not listening and watching live, remember you can catch us on the podcast. Just smash those like buttons everywhere. And Kurt, that's why sometimes he'll get here a little late, because he's smashing like buttons across the interweb. So that's important also. I want to look at the Heat at power forward and what they have. And I have an idea. I'm going to throw something a little out of the box after. But right now, I think we're looking at two things. Primary component number one is Kayla Martin. Nice player. Came out of nowhere a year ago. Kayla Martin was a two-way contract player who had just been released by the Charlotte Hornets. And we would have been sitting here if there was an Inside the Paint, RedRecover.com show then saying, who the hell is Kayla Martin? I think the NBA knows who he is now. Just like his brother Cody. Both had breakout seasons, proved from two-way players and nominal talent that they belong. So one option for the Heat is Kayla Martin. That seems to be the number one option. Again, I'm not going to ask you to rate him in terms of East power forwards because he's not a power forward. He's just playing one. Kurt, your thought in today's NBA, especially Eastern Conference, the West is bigger, where you have Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, and some bigger lineups, Anthony Davis and Thomas Bryant, probably at the Lakers, another bigger starting power rotation. Eastern Conference, do you think, when you're doing your Miami Heat previews on Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com, is Kayla Martin viable, or is that a big red flag when you're doing your Miami Heat season preview at power forward?
And I want to say this with all due respect to Kayla Martin, who you have to love the self-made men of the NBA, right? Who power their way up like that. He's a playoff red flag. Like during the regular season, during the first 82, I think he's competent, right? Like you can get by with that and still win a lot of games in that. And look, we've talked about this before, and the fans all know this. Nobody really gets all the talent out of their players every year like the Heat do, right? Like their just ability to develop players and raise them up. But when you get into the matchups and really drill down in a best of seven, I'm going to look at that lineup and say Caleb Martin is where I want to attack. I'm not attacking Bam. I'm not attacking playoff Jimmy and on down the line. But I think I can attack Caleb Martin, and I can put him in switches, put him in more difficult situations. That's where I think Crowder becomes the upgrade, right? Like he is just a proven playoff guy that you can count on, who is a big physical body, who can do a lot of things. So I love Martin. I love Martin in a role, but I think they're asking a lot of him as a starter.
And number two option here, and I'm going to get to my surprise number three in a second, is a lot of people are talking about Jimmy Butler as a power forward. Where I find that interesting, Kurt, is this. When Jimmy Butler first arrived to the Heat, when he arrived from the 76ers, I was debating positionally whether I was calling him the Heat's starting small forward or starting shooting guard. Because Duncan Robinson, I sort of looked at as a small forward. He's not as agile to defend two guards. So in my lineups, a lot of times I would list Jimmy as the two alongside Goran Dragic, and Duncan Robinson as the three. So I'm debating whether he's a 2-3, and now we're talking about whether he's a 3-4. Could you see Jimmy Butler playing considerable minutes at the 4, number one? And number two, knowing you and players' egos and players' fears and not wanting to have the crap knocked out of them during the regular season, do you think Jimmy Butler would even be receptive to being named coming out of camp, the Heat starting 4, knowing how irascible and persnickety Jimmy Butler can be.
Those are very good, very big words for him, but I think it's well phrased, Ira. It is. I think in today's NBA, he just kind of, again, he's going to play some there, I think, like in a smaller NBA. It's just the way the league is now with spacing and stuff. And frankly, his ability to guard up. He is somebody who can guard up a position, sort of. It's right. We've talked about this, but Ira, in today's fluid NBA, where like good luck defining the positions with the Raptors or something, like have fun with that. Like I think you are who you guard a lot of times. You know, I don't know. Offense is more fluid, but on defense, who are you guarding? Jimmy can guard fours. I think you could bring him out of camp as a starting four, but I think you run into exactly what you said, which is now you're asking a lot of a guy that you kind of, I don't want to say take it easy on, but like you do need him at 100% or close to it, as close as you can get entering the playoffs, because he is critical for your playoff success, and you can't wear him down having him bang with bigger bodies a lot of nights, and having just tough covers with the fours across the NBA, across the East. So you're asking a lot of him if you're doing that. In the same way, like, you know, you mentioned Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis likes to play the four. Well, part of that is he just doesn't want to bang, right? He just doesn't want to bang.
Every year, Anthony Davis, whether it's been with the Pelicans, whether it's been with the Lakers, you always hear how he doesn't want to be the starting center, how he bristles at that. You know, different players can sort of, you know, in their own way, make their statement without making it. And Anthony Davis for years didn't give a crap if it's a JaVale McGee, if it's going to be a Thomas Bryant this year, the placeholder center. How many teams have we seen play? The Miami Heat had it in Myers Leonard. I can go way back in NBA history to Mark Ivoroni with the 76ers, where you just start a guy at center, you play him the first 4 minutes of each half, maybe never see him again just to get that placeholder, because power forwards notoriously don't want to be centers. Small forwards notoriously don't want to be power forwards. You don't want to start a game with that arm bar up, using both of your legs as that base, holding off someone. That wears on you when you get to the 30th and the 40th and the 45th minute of a game. So I could see Jimmy Butler not doing it. And I know this sounds kind of crappy. And I love Kayla Martin, not only as a player, but as a person. So my question is or my statement would be, I don't give a rat's ass if Kayla Martin gets tired during the game. I don't give a rat's butt if Kayla Martin gets in foul trouble guarding power forwards during the game. Because, Kurt, it comes down to what we never talk about when we do these type of things, the closing lineup versus the starting lineup. The starting lineup is ego, oh boy, they're throwing a jump ball up, and I'm going to be someone who's going to stand around the circle and dap the other 9 guys and maybe the referees, depending who they are. And you just seen, and you're announced as a starter, and the lights go down, and you get the whole introduction stuff, which is, you know, whether it's the Heat with Michael Biamonte bellowing out your name, or the Lakers with that remarkable curtain that they lower and they show pictures of the players. It's a big deal to players. I get that. Here's my question to you. Miami Heat closing lineup. What I see, and again, matchups might depend on this. Certainly if Robert Williams is healthy again and Al Horford is out there, they're a bigger team. If the Heat make the finals against the Lakers or someone, a bigger team. But for argument's sake, I'm saying, and I want you to punch a hole in this, and I want you to say, no, it should be X instead, that I think the Heat's optimal closing lineup for maximization of resources is Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, Victor Oladipo, Tyler Hero, and Kyle Lowry. Punch a hole in that, Kurt Helin, knowing the rest of the roster. Who do you think in your closing roster? Again, I'm not talking specifics about specific matchups, but in general, that if I were to list the Heat's closing roster as, punch a hole in that.
Problem is that was where my head was, which is exactly in the same place, which is that Jimmy Butler may not want to be the 4, but I think he's your best 4, frankly. And you're probably going to want to play him there a lot at the end of the games. I think where you can punch a hole in that is what you kind of said not to do, which is I think that's my core starting 4. And then there are matchups where I'm like, oh my God, we're playing Minnesota. They're bleeping huge. We better go get we better roll out, even if it's your event, like roll out a bigger body somewhere. You may need to do that. But I think that Jimmy at the 4, and then, I mean, Is Victor Oladipo the guy? I mean, I guess that's a different topic.
And again, and we have to see that. And we have to see if Tyler Hero's up to it. But my thought is this. Jimmy Butler might not be the matchup on what you just gave me, guarding Karl Anthony Towns. But I know this. Jimmy Butler would love to F up Karl Anthony Towns at the end of a game.
Yes.
He would relish that opportunity. Yeah. It wouldn't be, hey, Jimmy, you're just 6'7", you're giving up 4 inches. It's Jimmy, you're an MFer, and I would rather have you out there because you will fight him tooth and nail. Look, if you would ask Jimmy this question this way, Jimmy, you can either be our closing power forward or not on the floor at the end of a game. Well, no crap. We know what he's going to pick there. And before we go to break, I just want to give one name out here and one thought I have. Every season, we think we know the Miami Heat starting lineup, and they give us that twist. For example, when Tyler Hero came out as a rookie, #1 draft choice out of Kentucky, nice preseason, what happens on opening night? Kendrick Nunn's in the starting lineup the entire season instead. When we think we know the Heat starting lineup, a Myers Leonard shows up in your starting lineup instead. Last season, we weren't as sure. PJ Tucker, he was already 59 years old. He comes out. He's still the starting power forward instead. I just have a thought here. And again, this is a stretch a little bit. And by the way, if you're on the chat, please chime in here. We'll get to you all after this break. But I just have a thought. Don't count out Haywood Highsmith. The Miami Heat love them a project. They love someone you didn't know. They love a Kendrick Nunn, Oakland University. Who the hell is this guy? He couldn't even last in Illinois. That worked out okay. Myers Leonard, that big galoot, he wasn't even good enough for the Blazers. They wanted to unload him. It worked out at the start of the season with Myers Leonard. Last season, when you could look at the Heat rotation, you might not have expected a Kayla Martin. 2-way contract? Come on. He's in the rotation. I think the work they put in with Haywood Highsmith as a replica of a PJ Tucker #1, a spacer with his three-point shooting, and a time buyer. Because then you have Kayla Martin to come in, and you have Kayla Martin to defend wings, so you don't get maybe a Tyler Hero or a Victor Oladipo in foul trouble. So I just want to leave it there for the first segment here, as I think there is plan C, and it might be a little bit different. But what I want to talk to Kurt afterward, and we alluded to here at the start of the segment, is this. When do you put your assets into play? The Miami Heat assets. Duncan Robinson, $16 to $18 million contract. Your big lump sum to put out in the salary cap. Miami Heat 2026-28 first-round draft choices. Your last remaining major resources there. Possibly Tyler Hero, not extended yet, still in trade play. When do the Miami Heat make their move? Camp, start of season, mid-season trading deadline. We'll get into that in juicy bits, including your comments on our YouTube chat board after this break on RedRecover.com, Inside the Paint. And welcome back to our RedRecover.com Inside the Paint show. We're here every Wednesday at 9 a.m. Eastern, or as Kurt likes to say, 6 a.m. Pacific time. But
they got coffee out here, man. Problem. We're good.
You know what? Maybe I'll get some late games, some travel. We'll go a little bit later. If you missed our first segment, we spoke about Jay Crowder, the Miami Heat power forward situation. You can pick that up at any of your podcast outlets, or just call Orlando Alzugaray directly, and he'll tell you what we said. So you can get that there. I want to go into what I spoke about before the break, but first I want to go to the chat board a little bit. Just going to throw some quick stuff at you, Kurt. Dario says he doesn't like Jay Crowder over Kayla Martin. I can understand continuity. Yeah. I can understand cost. We're going to get to that in a little bit also. Kurt, going to put you on the spot again. Give me 2 or 3 reasons why Jay Crowder is definitively better right now for getting money, for getting assets needed for a trade. But right now, why is Jay Crowder a better player in the NBA right now than Kayla Martin?
By the way, you talked about continuity. Bringing Crowder in is continuity, right? Like, again, he was here 2 years ago. This is not plugging and playing some guy. You're like, I kind of hope he fits. No, it's like Crowder fits. Crowder absolutely fits. He is more than Caleb Martin. I just think he's a bigger body. I think I trust him more defensively. Caleb gets everything out of it, but I just kind of trust Crowder to be able to guard up, to do what he needs to do as a 4. And I can also, you mentioned it, like he has been to the finals with the Heat. He was on the best team in the NBA last year. He has been on nothing but good NBA teams for a long time. Yes. I trust him in big moments. Spoelstra will trust him in big moments. Caleb has to earn that. I don't want this to be Bash Caleb Day. I just trust Crowder to make that play more. I just think he's at this point in their careers, a slightly better player. The concern, or better player, the concern, like you mentioned, is more at what cost.
Right. And we'll get to that in a second. Greater Good chimes in here. Caleb already is playing in the East and can hold his own. Kurt and I mentioned this in our first segment. Regular season, yes. But in the playoffs, coaches pick and they prod at your lineup. They'll change what they do to gain an advantage. They will go big and bigger. Now, you get a matchup like the 76ers. Okay, you have Joel Embiid. No one's handling in the middle. You probably can play Caleb on PJ Tucker because he's going to stand out at the three-point line anyway. But other teams might pummel you. The Celtics, if it's Robert Williams inside on the boards, if it's Al Horford as a roll man using his height difference. So, Kurt, we were talking in the first segment, the playoffs are different where you might need more true positional delineations.
Milwaukee is the other one that comes to mind where they're starting Lopez. You've got to have Middleton's just big and can do a lot. And I mean, I don't know what position you want to define Giannis as, but Giannis is his own problem. But now suddenly that size and ability to guard up, you can't just hide Kayla Martin somewhere. He's going to have to guard somebody good. And I think you hit the nail on the head. They will be fine through the first 82, and they will be top 4 seed, I still think. I mean, we've discussed how the East is, but they're in the mix there. Should be home for the first round. But beyond that, when you get to the postseason and I can go at a matchup, I'm looking at that starting 5 we talked about during the first segment of the Inside the Paint on the RedRecover show. I'm going to go with Caleb. I mean, unless if Kyle Lowry's healthy and back to being, and that's a whole different conversation. Then I want Caleb. Caleb is the guy I'm going to just circle.
And that's fine where you're attacking, and I get all that. I'm not sure about top 4 only because I think, Kurt, you could at least make an argument. Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia, Brooklyn. You certainly can make an argument in there that the Heat could fall to 5 and wind up in a really tough 4-5 opening round, first round series. I think you'd agree with that?
Yeah, no, I was going to say top. I don't know what to do with Brooklyn, but yes, absolutely. And by the way, with all my questions about Philadelphia, they're not regular season questions. I think they're going to win a lot of games.
No, it's James Harden in the playoffs. We've seen there, been that, done it, got that. Big Dan 305 says that he'd need to trade for Miles Turner. You know, it's interesting because Kurt at NBCSports.com and Pro Basketball Talk goes around the NBA. And yet there's one team, I don't know what the hell they are, what the heck they are doing, what the approach is there, why they have a veteran coach guiding a team on the come that doesn't seem to be a fit at all with Rick Carlisle and what's going on there in Indiana. What's going on in Indiana, Kurt? And is Miles Turner staying? Is he going? Are they staying with some of the old? Are they moving to Halliburton and the young picks and some of the new? What do you think the ultimate fate is? Because I think there's a real interest in Heat Nation here when it comes to Miles Turner. What do you think? What's the fate of Miles Turner? And what's the fate of the Pacers this season?
You know what a team where there's a conflict in the front office looks like from a distance? Because, I mean, there's clearly, and my guess is, and this is purely speculation on my part, is that their owner, Herb Simon, has never wanted to bottom out. He has never wanted to truly rebuild in that sense. But I think that their owner, Pritchard, and their current front office sees that as the path forward. They're looking at Hield and Miles Turner trades. Man, I would make a Miles Turner's trade. If I'm just personally higher on Miles Turner than a lot of people. Like a lot of people, he can shoot the 3. He is a very good paint defender, shot blocker. I just think he can fit as a modern big in a lot of places. What they're doing, especially with, like you said, Rick Carlisle, who's a X's and O's master coach, but not necessarily the guy I want developing and building up my young players. He's not easy on guys.
Yes.
I don't know what they're doing. It's a very conflicted situation there that there seems to be push and pull. But that said, I expect Turner to be out the door by the trade deadline. He's up for a new contract, by the way. I don't think they want to pay him what the market's going to pay him.
He's in the final year of his contract, so they have to make that decision whether they load up there. They got rid of Sabonis last year. Buddy Hield seems to be in the wind as someone they had to take on. They're talking about picks. I mean, I know you're not exactly regular season power rankings now, but percentage chance of Indiana even making the play-in, Kurt Helin?
Oh, I think they're below, especially in the East that's deep. If they kept their roster together as is, they'd stand an outside chance of being 9-10 on again, Hield wins you some games because you can shoot. Turner's good. And their rebuilding piece starts with Tyrese Halliburton. They're not going to quite bottom out in a Utah kind of way or a real bottom because Tyrese Halliburton's good. So I don't think they're going all the way down, but I think they want to retool around him, and Turner and Hield certainly aren't on the Halliburton timeline. So I don't think they want to. I think that you're going to see them shed at least through the season and by the trade deadline and be one of those teams in the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes when it matters.
And I get that. So especially you being based out there in Los Angeles and California, we've heard a lot of talk of that's a place that might be willing to take on the Lakers too, preferably unprotected first-round picks in some sort of package involving Turner, maybe Buddy Hield, Russell Westbrook's money coming back to match that. If you're the Miami Heat, are you giving up 2 unprotected first-round picks, whatever year you want to talk about, for Miles Turner in a trade?
No, I'd give up 1. I mean, the Laker thing is for Hield and Turner. And by the way, please take Russell Westbrook. Please take him off our hands, right? You're paying for all that. But would I give up 1 and something for Turner? I would seriously, again, I would, depending on what you're giving up, obviously, but I would seriously consider that only because now you're talking, if you're willing to pay him, if you're willing to pay look, it's not a max deal, but he's going to get paid like a good NBA center going forward. Because again, if you want to put Bam at the 4 and have him run around block shots, well, if him and Turner on a front line would be fearsome defensively. And
okay, so trade of first-round draft choice, Duncan Robinson's contract, which I honestly think is too much for the Pacers to take on, but they don't want to pay Turner, but I got to throw some money in there somehow.
Yeah.
So Duncan Robinson, first-round pick, and Tyler Hero.
Ooh. Now I think it's getting too steep. And then again, we've talked about Tyler, and you in particular have talked about Tyler needing to prove, right? You're very much Missouri on Tyler Hero, right? As a starter, he's got to show you.
Yes.
That said, that's too big an asset. Duncan Robinson.
Okay, and that's just, I'm just trying to get to that point there where people want something, but how much do you want? We're in a sit and wait period. Remember, folks, December 15th, players signed in the offseason become trade eligible because both took substantial raises. Dwayne Dedmon and Victor Oladipo not trade eligible until January 15th. So then you might have some more money to throw in. You might be able to move the money around a different way that you could do Duncan Robinson and Dwayne Dedmon. And that's why the Heat structured their contracts that way to get into that direction. Going to stay with the chat board in this session. We'll go to some Heat burning questions in our final segment going into camp. This is our last RedRecover.com Inside the Paint show before we're in training camp. Greater Good chimes back in. He says, Kyle Lowry is the question. Does he show up ready? I think you'd agree with that, Kurt, that Kyle Lowry is a major swing state when it comes to the Heat this season.
If they are going to return to the NBA Finals or just be in the mix again with Milwaukee and Boston and Brooklyn and everybody else, that's, I think, the biggest one. They need not vintage Kyle Lowry, but a closer to it than we saw last year version of him. On top of health, on top of every other question that's out there with a lot of teams, that's, to me, the biggest change. They need that Kyle Lowry back, especially with whatever they do at the 4, whatever ends up happening. Because they're going to make a move, right? They're going to do something at the 4. Do you think?
No, again, like I mentioned in our first segment, I think they might take a look at Haywood Highsmith. They might look at Kayla Martin. They might say it's screw it. Jimmy Butler's going to be our closer at the 4 anyway. So we just want to get the best talent out there. Eric Spoelstra's been the ultimate positionalist coach, now going back to playing LeBron at 1 through 5, like he said, playing Chris Bosh at 4 or 5. So we're talking over a decade now of this, that he's gone in that direction. So I wouldn't necessarily assume some type of deal there. I will say this. There's a lot that gets lost in the translation because of recency bias in the last thing we saw, which was Kyle Lowry limping around the court, maybe not in his best shape because of personal reasons, not able to work out as much. Kyle Lowry was really, really good for the Miami Heat when he was on the court through 2/3, 3/4 of the season last year. He made them better. He made you understand why they traded Goran Dragic and Precious Achiuwa, and they made the deal that they did. He was very, very good. He was almost, if not at an all-star level for the Heat through the first at least half of the season. So I think if he gets back to that, I think people are sort of forgetting where we are right now. Greater Good chimes in with this, and again, Kurt's the dog person here, like Big O. He said when it comes to the Heat lineup and playing small, pit bulls are smaller than Rottweilers. I'll take greater good on that because I'm not sure either. And I think that's the thing. If Erik Spoelstra can get an undersized power forward to play at level 9 during the regular season, and if the great power forwards are going to be dogs, I'm not mentioning Anthony Davis or anything, but if the great power forwards are going to play like dogs, not mentioning Anthony Davis or anything, and only play at level 5 or 6 because it's just the regular season, I think you can equalize that to a degree.
Yeah.
I think the younger, hungry guy versus the veteran conserving for the playoffs, even like a PJ Tucker, I think, like Kurt said, I think I can agree that you can pull that off. Staying here with our chat board, pretty much
PJ
saying
Tucker
that
is going to rest a lot this season, by the way.
Excuse me?
They're going to rest PJ Tucker a whole lot this season, man.
Yeah, again, I don't think he has. They gave him 3 seasons guaranteed, and I don't think that they can go more than any way than half a season counting on PJ in order to maximize that $32 million 3-year contract they gave him, the one where even the Heat drew the line, so we were going there. One of the questions here John Yang brings up is Bam Adebayo getting out-muscled by big centers. And again, I don't know how many there are. In the East, there's Joel Embiid. Please help me here if I'm missing someone.
No.
Do you have concerns about Bam at the 5? That if we lock him in as the Heat 5, whether it's a Rob Williams, whether it's an Embiid, do the Heat have too much of a deficit size-wise by playing Bam Adebayo when I think you would agree, Kurt Helin, that a decade ago or 5 years ago, Bam was your prototypic power forward body. Yes. Any concerns about Bam enduring through his career being told you're the 5?
No, I think every team still needs to have an old school big guy 5 on the roster for some nights, right? Like you just need somebody you can roll out there and take that punishment. But you mentioned it. Who are the other 5s who are scaring you in the East? Brook Lopez isn't banging you inside.
And that's if you're even guarding him, you might have a wing on him if he's going to shoot his 3-pointers anyway. John Collins fell in love with the 3-point shot, so he's not necessarily the same player there. You can play that way. Chicago looks like they're going to go a little smaller, maybe with Pat Williams, who's a career
steps out anyway. Vooch is a step out guy anyway.
And again, Bam is switching everything. First play of every game, and I can't freaking stand that because I don't know what level of curse word I can use. The opposition puts Bam in a 1-5 pick and roll. Bam jumps out on the point guard. He's not guarding a center for that position anyway. I don't like it. I think Erik Spoelstra capitulates in those situations. I understand Bam can guard anyone on the floor. I don't think Bam has to guard anyone on the floor. And I hate when the Heat give up the matchup so early. All of a sudden, you got Kyle banging in the post with a center. They've done what they want. So I almost would like to see less switchability with Bam Adebayo and maybe go in a different direction. But speaking of different directions here on RedRecover.com inside the paint, when we come back after this break, we'll stay on the chat board. Keep an eye out on your questions. I see a Nikola Jovic question already has come in from Big Dan. I also want to go into Heat questions going into training camp because a week from now, I will be shirtless, God help us, in the Bahamas doing our show out there during Heat training camp. So after this break, we're going to come back with some burning questions going into training camp for the Miami Heat on the RedRecover.com Inside the Paint Show. Ira Winderman from the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, and he's Kurt Helin from Pro Basketball Talk at NBCSports.com. And this is our final segment this week on RedRecover.com Inside the Paint. Had a question before the break. Big Dan asked, any chance of Nikola Jovic having a role this year? And it's interesting. We mentioned all the Heat's options at power forward and didn't mention the 6'11" beanpole guy. My thought is he's sort of like a Porzingis, or I'm going to bring up a kind of scary name, a Nicholas Skidishvili, as one of these tall, lanky Europeans who might or might not make it. So, Kurt, I don't see a future. And again, I think when you drafted 27, it's a wing and a prayer. It's a project. Youngest player in this year's draft. Do you get any sense that Erik Spoelstra and the win now Miami Heat with 36-year-old Kyle Lowry and 33-year-old Jimmy Butler are about to let a 19-year-old crash their party?
Not unless he earns it. I mean, that's the he's going to have to blow some doors off in camp. And I'm with you. I don't think that. I'll just say in general, I'm talking to people when you run up to the draft, and you've probably heard this from Miami. Big men taken after 10 are considered projects. Like if you take a big guy in the top, you take your Joel Embiids and your Anthony Davises and whatever high up the board. You're taking them for a reason. Big men taken later are considered guys. Hey man, I hope this works out. I hope we can develop this guy to something. He's going to have to. I mean, I'll ask you: is he going to be spending some time in the G League this year, or is he going to be doing it on the bench?
You know, it's funny because I've gone with Big O and the Big O show back and forth on that. On one hand, I think he could use it. On the other hand, the G League is such a crappy league for big men where all the centers are 6'8", and they're all a bunch of hungry NBA Rottweilers like we used in our previous segment who are trying to get in the league. I don't know if that's the best way to teach him. I'm not so sure that having him at Heat Camp and working with an older player like a Dwayne Dedmon, having an Alonzo Mourning available, having Malik Allen on the staff wouldn't be his better training mode. Udonis Haslem. Last season we heard about guys and the big guys getting the crap knocked out of them with Omer Yurtseven going up and Udonis Haslem destroying him at 3-on-3. I think that might be the way for Nikola Jovic to go to work in camp versus to go to the G League. You know what? Nikola Jovic can go to the G League, can average 23 and 14. And I think they'll be empty numbers, Kurt, because I think he'll be doing it against guys where, like, you'll be going to me, wait a minute, that guy's still in the G League? He's still playing pro ball? It's a league of Norvell Pellies or whatever. That's what the G League is.
It's a great developmental tool for guys you need to get run for. But I'm not sure that I'm with you. I think there's some logic to you get better training just being with the big team. I mean, if you're around an NBA team, the stars, Jimmy Butler and your Bam Adebayos and stuff, they put in their work. Don't get me wrong, but they also focus so much on recovery. They do not practice that hard. This is the NBA is a recovery league, but for guys 11 and down, 10 and down on the roster, they are putting in the work. They are banging with coaches. They're, like you said, they're running 3-on-3s. They're getting a lot of coaching and individual work. And for some players, I think that's the better spot than just, hey, he needs to get run. We're going to throw him out there in the G League.
I agree. I want to go to our questions going into camp. Again, Miami Heat Media Day, Monday at FTX Arena. Tuesday, they started.
Have you bought enough resort wear for this?
You know, I'm just trying to get enough sunscreen with this complexion. So I'm going to start easy there living in Florida. But it's funny, Kurt, because so many people like, oh, boy, the Bahamas. But to me, it's almost like when the Lakers or a team goes to Hawaii, when you sort of already live in paradise and you live by the beach and you have the year-round good weather. It's like the Bahamas are like, I don't know, like 30 miles from Fort Lauderdale. It's the same place, just at resort prices. So I would have been fine at FTX Arena. But you know what? It's the job. It's what I do. Never going to complain about covering pro basketball. Speaking of complain or not, there's a lot of players in the NBA that don't like to be called out. And when they get called out, they go south. You have a little bit of that with Russell Westbrook going on with the melodrama with the Lakers. When we ended with the Miami Heat, it was Eric Spoelstra to a smaller degree, Pat Riley to a wider degree, telling Kyle Lowry, you better get in shape. Kyle Lowry can be, I used the word persnickety earlier with Jimmy Butler. I think he could be that also. What do you think the fallout is from the comments of Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley regarding Kyle Lowry's conditioning? And what do you think we're going to hear about that from Kyle Lowry at Media Day and then the start of training camp?
Yeah, you have to be careful who you do that with a little bit, right? Because some guys take it as an offense and want to push their way out and start and become disruptive forces. I don't want to mention any names, Westbrook. But there are guys who kind of don't handle that well. I think Lowry, though, and you're closer to this, but my sense of him as a person covering him over the years and watching him is he's the guy who takes that as a challenge. Yeah. He's the guy who, and I think that's part of the reason it was a coordinated effort. You can call him out publicly. You can call him out privately. And we can get in. There were reasons last year that he wasn't necessarily getting the time.
And he wanted to wait for the team for almost a month. Correct.
Yeah. But he comes back this year, I think, with more of that fire. And I think he knows how last season ended, how the season ended for the Heat. And he wants to be a bigger, he wasn't the role. He wasn't the impact in the postseason that he wanted to be. And I think he takes that personally. I think he's the kind of guy who that's fire for him. That's fuel. And he comes back, if Instagram is to be believed, he comes back in better shape, right? And I think that works, but you better know who you're dealing with when you do it, because some guys, this is not a one-size-fits-all league as a coach. You really have to know your players.
And Eric Spoelstra has been great at that. We remember Kyle Lowry's final comment on the podium after Game 7 against the Celtics when he said he thought this season was a waste of time because they didn't win a championship. Pat Riley a week later said, hey, that's too strong. We were within one game at the finals, best record in the East. We did a lot of good things here. So there's been a sort of back and forth push-pull between the two of them. I think this becomes Kyle Lowry's FU season. His FU to Riley, to Spoelstra, to Heat fans, to anyone who doubted him, to anyone who posted pictures of him in his Dockers or whatever bursting out. I think that's his FU season to everyone. I think he's the kind of person who takes names, maybe even the names Kurt Helin and Ira Winderman, and he gets back. But I will say this.
Won't be the first.
Kyle Lowry's personal situation, the Heat will still allow him any time off that he needs. The Heat will still treat him as a 36-year-old point guard and therefore be careful when it comes to not overusing and overextending him as well. Question number 2 on Kyle Lowry there. And we've gone back and forth on this, and I've had some Ask Ira questions here at sunsentinel.com. I've seen it on the interwebs also. Do you feel comfortable enough with the Heat depth at point guard and backup situation with Gabe Vincent that you can give Kyle Lowry the needed time off and not force his hand?
First off, Ask Ira is still one of the best columns out there. Like, it really, I hope Heat fans appreciate how good that is, because that kind of insight doesn't come with every team. And I mean, there's a lot of good beat writers out there, but answering the questions like that is a fantastic piece. I think Gabe has kind of earned some of that, right? Like, I think you can trust him. This is a case where you can trust him a little bit because, and he, again, for the first 82, you can lean on him because he's proven he can take some of that on. He did such he came on and has taken on so much last year and took such.
And he did it in the first round. And Trae Young left the first round of the playoffs saying, "Hey, that guy, pay attention to that guy."
Yeah. So I think you can trust doing that. I also think you just have to. I think that at the end of the day, with this Heat team, you've got to make sure Jimmy Butler doesn't wear himself down over the course of the season. You've got to do it with Kyle Lowry. Bam's a little younger, but I think all those guys just have to be.
And here's my thought. When it comes to playmaking, the Heat aren't a traditional team with point guard. Jimmy Butler's a facilitator. Jimmy Butler prefers to pass than to shoot so often. So I think you see him as a playmaker. Bam Adebayo is a facilitator. So I think you'll see Bam. He's always at the elbow. He almost likes to pass too much more than that. Victor Oladipo has always been a combo guard, not pointy enough to be considered a point guard, but certainly can do that also. So I think that Heat's facilitators and playmakers sort of come in different directions. The beauty of our show, not only do we have our YouTube chat board, but Kurt and I have our phones handy, which means Big O chimes in at any time. He just sent us a story, one of Sports Illustrated aggregational stories, not the good writers, not Chris Mannix or Howard Beck, but their guys put out there that perhaps DeMar DeRozan shakes free from the Chicago Bulls. And it's interesting because Kurt does some of that also. He'll take national stories and then he puts a spin on it. You should read them at probasketballtalk.com. Some of the stuff is credible that gets put out there. Some of the stuff you slap aside and don't even follow up on.
Yeah.
This story was, if things don't go well for the Bulls, might they make a move where DeMar DeRozan, I think we both agree, had a career year last year. Yeah. No one expected that from Chicago. I understand that. Based on the salary and based on the age and based on what you would need to give up, I can't see that coming into play. I can understand. And Kurt, here's the problem. All these stories are always a half a story. You can look at side A of an A-B equation and say, you know what? Yeah. If it doesn't work out for the Bulls and they want to play Patrick Williams more and they want to go with their young players, and when Lonzo Ball comes back and healthy, maybe they go younger and they move off Nikola Vucevic, move off DeMar DeRozan. But I can't see that at the moment. As a matter of fact, I'll put it this way. So you're sitting in the worldwide Pro Basketball Talk headquarters, which I got a feeling is the same setting you talk to us every Wednesday here on RedRecover.com inside the paint. When you saw that come across, someone speculating someone like that, give me the Pro Basketball Talk slap down. When you see that, does that go into you? I must follow that up. I must aggregate that. I must debunk that. I must ignore that. Where do you put that in your continuum over there at NBCSports.com?
Yeah, by the way, I'm looking forward to the season starting where I can get back to writing more original stuff and not as much of this stuff. This would probably be an ignore because, like you said, for me, it starts with, if things go bad for the Bulls have put themselves in a position where they're good. And that's as good as they're going to be. Like they are.
Yes.
They're a play-in team right now. And in this East, with this depth, I think we talked about the Big Five teams, and I think Cleveland and Toronto battle for that 6-7 spot, and then Chicago's next. And maybe they move up a little with injuries, but I don't think they're an actual make the playoff. I think they're a play-in team, and that's who they are. I don't think there is a demand for DeRozan around the league. They're the Bulls kind of, when they signed that contract, how many eyebrows were raised around the league, Ira, by people going that I talked to?
That was a terrible deal. What happened to work out because no one saw DeMar DeRozan sort of wanting to have his own FU season and put it in our faces.
Yeah, he was fantastic. I don't want to take anything away from how good he was last year, and I get you can make the leap, well, then sell high. I just don't think there's a market because everybody looks at that contract, looks at his age, looks at what he did and look, he's never bad. Guy's never bad.
Right.
But what happened, who he was in Toronto, even who he was in San Antonio before last season, is I think who teams think he was. I'm like, they think, wow, he had a breakout career year at that age. That's good for him. They don't see that as a sustainable thing.
And here's the other thing, and I can't see two kings of the mid-range on the same team. Look, maybe the mid-range was sold off too quickly, but Jimmy Butler's a king of the mid-range. DeMar DeRozan is the king of the mid-range in the NBA. You can't be giving up that many three-pointers in exchange for those two-pointers. That's what the other team wants.
I was going to say, if you watch the WNBA Finals, Game 5, the final game of that,
I did.
Twos from Connecticut and threes from the Aces, and I'm pretty good at math. 3 is more than 2.
Yes.
And you're going to win more than that.
There are exceptions where the good 2 is still better. That's what Eric Spoelstra preaches. But the Heat have too many twosies right now, and that's been a problem also. Greater Good chimes back in. Kyle Lowry hopefully gets infected with Jimmy Butler's competitiveness. No. Kyle Lowry is as competitive as anyone. He's a son of a bitch, correct, Kurt?
Absolutely. Look, Kawhi Leonard gets a lot of credit for that Toronto title. That was Kyle Lowry's team, right? They had traded DeRozan and made the move. Kyle Lowry was still the locker room leader, the heart of that team. That's not who, frankly, locker room leader is not who Kawhi is. Like he leads by example, sort of. But like that was Lowry's team. He is fiery and he pushes back. Yeah, that's not the problem. That's not going to be your issue ever with Kyle Lowry.
I want to go real quick because, again, we're running up against it here. If you missed either of our first 2 segments, you can catch them at all of our podcast outlets here on RedRecover.com inside the paint. Kurt, going to put you on the spot because, hey, that's what I get to do. Miami Heat opening night starting power forward is?
Kayla Martin.
Kayla Martin. I think that's the base answer for right now. We'll see in training camp. I wouldn't read too much into Eric Spoelstra's lineups in training camp. They have a very weird schedule. They open with their public scrimmage on Monday. Tuesday, this is a week from now, 2 weeks from now. Tuesday, they have their exhibition opener against the Timberwolves. Off Wednesday, Thursday exhibition in Brooklyn, Friday exhibition in Memphis. So basically, they open their preseason with a run of 4 in 5 nights. Because of that, I think don't take anything from the preseason schedule. Eric Spoelstra in his head knows what he wants to do. In practices, we'll see what works and what doesn't work. That's the beauty of carrying 20 players for camp is you can run your scrimmages. You can play 5-on-5 in the preseason during your shoot-arounds, during your practices. That gets decided. Okay, the questions get tougher as we move on a little bit. In a downsized NBA with the Miami Heat having so many wing players, Dwayne Dedmon, in or out of the primary rotation?
In. I think he's the first big off the, not first big off the bench, but he backs up the 5. He plays some minutes. I think I'm another guy I'm just higher on than a lot of people, but I think he's part of the rotation.
Omer, though, do you think Omer can push him out? Again, it's interesting.
That's a good question.
Youthful potential versus the win now Miami Heat. That's why I asked that Dedmon question.
Yeah, that's a good. And is that one of our first 82 versus final 16 questions? It's like, is Omar getting minutes during the regular season?
But it's interesting you mentioned first 82 because the Heat played to win. They played for the number 1 seed last year. So while other teams are, we're too big. We're the Lakers. We don't care about the regular season. It's all about the playoffs. You know, like that kind of attitude. Warriors to a degree the same way. The Heat do play for the regular season. So I think you do see a little more. And then here's sort of the money question. And I'm going to put you on the spot here in our final minute of this week's RedRecover.com Inside the Paint. Because this plays not only to what a player does best, but also Eric Spoelstra having to set up his best possible rotation. Tyler Hero, Miami Heat 2020, 22, 23 starter, or continuing role of sixth man of the year?
I think he gets a chance to start. I think he starts to begin the season. If that doesn't work out, I don't think that leash is very long, but I think he starts there. I think he gets the chance in a contract year. I think they give him that opportunity.
I'm going to show my age. There used to be a show on PBS called McLaughlin Groove with a guy named John McLaughlin who would just answer no matter who said anything. His response would be, wrong, you were wrong there. I still think the Heat want to get three-point shooting in there. I could see Max Strus taking that role instead of Tyler Hero. You've got to be able to space the floor. And for as much as Tyler can shoot threes, a known spot-up three-point shooter, which you lost in P.J. Tucker, you might not need on the floor. So I say wrong, Kurt Helin. You might be wrong on that. But more than that, I say I will have a glow next week of sunscreen when I join you for RedRecover.com from the Bahamas. I'm going further east, even though Kurt is all the way out as west as you can go in the continental 48 out in California. And it gets real not real-ist next week when we join you again. If you missed any of our segments, you can catch it at all our podcast outlets. You must smash like buttons or else Big O won't let you listen. But for now, the Big O Show rolls on.